is insanely hard to be a Christian, but at the same time, it is no other way that I would, or there is no other way that I want to live.
I am excited to have this conversation because I think this is a exceptional time of year to have this conversation. Do you know what today is? The day that we're recording this day? This day today, what it's called?
January 10th, 2025. Yes. Fill me in. What else?
Today is called Quitter's Day. Don't know if you knew that, but it's the second Friday of the new year is called Quitter's Day because it's when most people quit their New Year's resolutions.
See, I always knew that 80% of people fail or fall off by February, but I did not know there was an official day. Interesting.
Yeah. And I believe that we are having this conversation at the perfect time because I was actually scrolling through your social media earlier and I saw you posted something about not New Year, New Me, but Better Day, Better Me. Do I have that right?
Yes.
All right. Tell me about that mentality and what it means for you.
Yes. So I personally cannot stand New Year's resolutions at all anyways. The analogy that I always like to give, if your house is on fire, you're not going to wait till Monday or next year to call the fire department to put out your house. So if it's something that truly means something to you, getting healthier, hitting a new goal, whatever, you're not going to wait till a new year to do something. So New Year's Eve and New Year's Day are the most overhyped day, in my opinion. And especially now, I feel like people have reached, like, there's so much perk in like the social media aspect of being motivated and seeing all of these people win. But the disease of comparisonitis also is like, I'm too burnt out. I don't even want to start. And so I think if we learn how to do the small things very well, those are going to become very big things. And that's how we can be successful. So that's kind of where the whole better day, better me. Doesn't matter what tomorrow is going to bring if I don't even allow today to be a good day.
Yes, I love that.
Yes.
I like your analogy about the house on fire. I think it's a really clear one.
Yes.
I think the trouble point is when people think, oh, hey, there's just a little bit of fire in my oven. I can just clean the oven later without worrying about it, right? Before it gets to be this big, massive thing. And I think inevitably that's what happens is like, people allow these little things to creep up and become big things because we don't take care of the little things. Do you agree?
Well, yeah, because I think that's all where it starts. Is like a book that honestly like catapulted me into personal development was The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And when I had read this book like 8 years ago, it was like the most redundant thing that I had ever read because it was just continuously saying each chapter and drilling in this point of the little things compounding to be very, very big things. And, you know, in that example, I actually just did a presentation earlier this week on why that happens, that, it's just a small fire. It's nothing major. I can put it off and I'll deal with it later. Because if we kick it back to like the beginning, like cavemen days, it's not in our natural instinct to do things outside of our comfort zone. We don't want to be uncomfortable because if we're uncomfortable, typically that means we are not in a safe environment. So it's easier to be like, I will just worry about it later because I want to try to focus and be more comfortable here. So it's like you have to train yourself to break that mentality of like being uncomfortable to have to change and do something differently. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think that makes also a great point for why people need a coach. Because a coach is someone who's going to jump in and help you, right, push into that discomfort zone when you continually want to like get comfort. And, I think for most of us, the people who continue to grow and get 1% better every day have either a coach or a really good friend who's going to help keep you accountable. Because look, it's all of us have this innate nature, and I'm not better than you or better than anyone else. I also really want to be comfortable. I didn't even get dressed this morning until about half an hour ago. But like, there comes a point where you need to push yourself, and you need to have people around you who are going to hold you accountable to that better version of you to push you out of that and push you forward.
Yeah. And I, even with me being a coach, though, I think that there's a point to even acknowledge before that. And it's being willing to sit and actually face yourself before you try to turn to somebody else and and start taking action there, because I think so easily it's, again, social media gives us the great opportunity to compare. And you're not fully giving credit to where you are now or where you came from, because you have it thrown in your face constantly of how everybody is doing better, or so you think. And so I think it's important to like first slow down and like take a step back. Where am I? Who am I? What do I want? Why do I want it? Because I know there have been many occasions already that I've worked with people, or I have been given clients, referred clients from business coaches or health and nutrition coaches that are like, this person came to me because they wanted to drop 50 pounds because they said their husband or their spouse in general, like just doesn't look at them the same because they've gained all this weight, or I need to go make all this money because then I'll finally be happy. And then all of a sudden they make more money, they lose all this weight, and they're still left with themselves. And it's like, maybe you should have probably backed up a little bit and thought about why it is that you want it and where you are currently for why this is the destination you want to get to. So I think that, yes, having a coach is super important before even getting there. Don't just throw it on somebody else to also fix your problems. Like, sit with yourself and understand what problems you want to have fixed.
I love that. I think that's great advice to really start with trying to figure out, like, what is the goal? And I don't think a lot of people can answer that question.
Nope.
I was actually thinking about the other day how common it is for us to ask kids, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And we expect them to have some kind of answer, like they want to be a doctor, a firefighter, an astronaut, whatever it is. And as adults, oftentimes we don't really ask ourselves that question. We're like, all right, cool. And now I've reached adulthood and I have a job. I can pay my bills. I'm, relatively, again, comfortable. Is that like, do we just coast from here, or is there a plan? Where do I go? What's the North Star? Yeah. Right. I don't think people have that North Star. Yeah. So where does someone start in that process of figuring out what their North Star is? What is their destination?
Again, I love this because I was actually just at a coffee meeting earlier today, and I was just sharing this with somebody. My pastor, he mentioned this in a sermon a while back, and I agree in its entirety, is we are, oh my gosh, how did he say it? We are over-educated in the sense that we have access to any piece of information that we want, but we are under-applied. We don't have a knowledge problem. We have an action problem. Because even if you don't have the knowledge, someone somewhere very close by can give you that answer in an instant. It's actually applying the knowledge that is the problem. And so I feel like in everywhere you turn, somebody has a solution for you. But it's a matter of you actually taking action on it. And because we are constantly carried with noise, we don't even know how to make that happen, because we don't know what it truly is that what we want. And so the simple answer, and this is always step one I give people, just sit freaking down. Turn off all distractions, no background noises, don't have the TV on, like close yourself into a room and literally sit with yourself. What do I want? How did I get here? Who am I really living with, right? Like slowing down and just not letting the world answer something for you. Like sit in space with yourself and not be influenced by anything else. And I think you would be shocked to see that, hey, answers come.
Yeah, I love that. And it reminds me of how not common a thing it is to sit by yourself anymore. Like even when you're standing in line waiting for a coffee, what is your instant move?
You can't even go to the bathroom without scrolling.
Yeah, let me pull out my phone and just look at something instead of just sit in silence. Let me think. Let me talk to the person next to me. It's just become such a foreign concept to sit in thought with yourself.
You know what's the irony of this? So you know what today is? Today is I actually just launched an episode on my podcast that literally says the hardest person to sit with. And the episode is being the hardest person to actually sit and get to know is yourself.
Yeah, that's, wow. No coincidences, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it really is true. And, I think it's such a great starting point for people is to really understand who you are and like to remove all the noise of what people told you are, or what you think you need to be for everybody else. Mm-hmm. Because how many of us walk through the day thinking, hey, I need to be this for my spouse, for my kids, for my team at work. I need to do all of these things. Mm-hmm. And you don't put yourself as a priority there.
Yeah.
Like, how do you expect to be good for the people around you if you're not good to yourself first?
Yeah. And I actually just shared this analogy this week too. Imagine, where are you located?
New York.
Okay. I'm in Texas. So imagine you put into your GPS that you wanted to drive to Texas. If your GPS doesn't know that you're in New York, the likelihood of your GPS actually successfully getting you to Texas it's zero. Okay.
Right.
So that's the same with our lives. If we don't know where we are currently, how are we ever actually going to reach our destination? It's like, where are we starting from? That is going to be crucial in where it is that we want to go. So again, going back to this point of being at this new year, new me, 2025 is my year. It's like, okay, but on January 10th, 2025, like, where am I and where do I want to go? Because otherwise everything just becomes a wish. I want to make more money. I want to lose more weight. I want to travel more. Okay. Well, if you don't know where you're sitting currently, how are you going to make any of those a reality?
Right. Yeah, I love that. There are so many people who are sitting there lying to themselves saying, I'm in California, right? And you're taking the directions from California to Texas and being pissed off at yourself, thinking, hey, why isn't this working? Am I the problem? No, man, you're not the problem, but you're consistently lying to yourself and you refuse to face the fact that, hey, this is where I'm at. Right? Again, the hardest person.
But what's crazy is, like, even in that, like, you know, in the sense of lying to yourself, like, I also, like, I don't want someone to feel like that's like an even, because we're really good at self-defeating and shaming ourselves into that. Right. And so, yes, potentially lying, but I could almost challenge that a little bit further. That, are you lying, or is it that you truly don't know? Yeah. So it's like, yes, you may be lying to yourself, but you don't know because you're not actually sitting to find out an answer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. Yeah. I guess it's really not so much a willful lie, but, you know, just a continuation of the mistruth that you've been told about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So let's rewind a step. Like, how did you get to be Coach Jayme, right? How did you get to be this version of you? Was there a previous version who defined success a very different way?
1,000%. So I'm going to be skipping over a whole lot of details. So for what that's worth. And sometimes the reason why I don't like doing that is because it makes the journey sound way easier than what it was now that I am technically on the other side. But I have a very diverse resume personally and professionally. Again, in short, there's not a lot of adversity that I could tell you that I haven't faced, between abuse, came from a broken home, drugs, alcohol, rape. I attempted to end my life on multiple occasions. Career-wise, I've done hair and massage therapy, worked on dead people, worked with kids, waitress, did network marketing, sold life insurance, worked corporate, did all of the things. So I've experienced a lot of life in a lot of different ways. And a lot of that came from the storyline that I had created at a very young age, of that I have to work very hard to get the approval of others. It can't be about me. If I want to be loved, I have to do this. People won't respect me or care about me unless I do this. And in all of that, everything was very transactional, and my success, my self-worth, my identity was all tied to doing what the world told me was right. Fast forwarding to the young age of 25, it was 2 months before turning 26. I experienced a massive burnout where I got put on bed rest for an entire week with a massive kidney infection because I was putting terrible, terrible things in my body, drugs, alcohol, but then yet was still in the gym 7 days a week, 2 hours a day, was doing 80,000 different jobs, all of the things. And then when my body finally shut down and was like, hey, we're not doing this anymore, that was one of my many come to Jesus moments that, like, what I'm doing isn't working. And this is not how I want to live the rest of my life. And I can choose to let this continue, or I can choose to change it. And fortunately, because being an athlete, playing sports, being in the gym, along with all of my negative vices that I also poured into to run from me and my problems, fitness was one of them too. And it was this acknowledgement of like, okay, wait, if you have to train a muscle in a gym to get it stronger, the brain kind of works the same way. So if I don't want this to be my life anymore, I need to start training my thought process different. And so that's when my personal development journey really, really came in. And that was when I finally decided to take this desperation, work ethic of approval and being what everybody in the world told me what to be, or to try to work super hard to get people to love me because I so desperately craved that. I decided to shift that same energy into working on myself, facing my demons, training new habits and belief systems. And then so in that, initially I wanted to do motivational speaking, but then I realized I had been a coach of some sort my whole life. I coached gymnastics, special needs. I coached competitive cheer. I was always a leader. I was always this very hype in your face person, even in the darkest phases of my life. And so I decided to take that and be like, you know what? No, like I'm going to use that gift that God gave me throughout this entire journey. It was almost like a foreshadowing moment, if you will. And I decided I want to be able to coach people and help them do the same. So I always like to joke and say that I train people's brains.
I love that.
Thank you.
Before we go any further, just huge honor to you for sharing all of that, because even though that was like a pretty short summary, there was a lot in there. And I know for most people that would be hard to overcome. And I believe like not only have you overcome all of that, I'm sure that you still continue to, deal with it on certain times, as we all do.
Absolutely.
But now using that as a strength instead of a weakness. And I think that that's an incredible story to continue to tell, because there are other people who need that example of, hey, how do I deal with this? And it's not something that is going to be something to hold you back, but now you're using it as a platform for good. So again, before we go further, huge honor to you for doing that, because people need to see that. So thank you for doing that.
Appreciate that.
My follow-up question there is, what role does faith play in that for you? And was that something that became stronger through that process?
When I cyber stalked you, that was another reason why I wanted to be on this podcast. Because listen, God is my end all be all. So I was hoping we were going to go here. So I always joke and say that I am a recovering Catholic, because I was fortunate to always technically know of God, but I didn't know him. So my parents got divorced when I was 5. And so I was forced to go to church. I was, all of that was in a Catholic church. And it's like, if you don't do this, you're going to hell. And then like, supposed to live this way, but what I'm seeing was something that was completely different. And so in that, it was just this big, powerful being that I was afraid of, that I was going to hell unless I did what I was supposed to do. But then I was always wanting to rebel and do the opposite anyways. It was a weird thing. And then actually I've walked away from my faith a few times. One of the biggest ones was when I was 16, 2 of my best friends died in a car accident on the same day. And I'm from a very, very small town in Ohio where like we would have bring your tractor to school day. And so like we had a priest that like was the priest for 3 separate parishes or 3 different churches. And so I had to walk across the street from one showing to get to the next, and then literally had to leave one of the churches that I was forced to go to a Sunday mass on. I had to leave that early to get to the other church that I would, because depending the time of mass that it was would determine what location we went to. But then I had to leave that early to get to the other church for the other funeral, and the mass, like the songs that were played during the funeral are the same songs that I would hear in a normal Sunday mass. And so I was very angry at God, and I walked away from my faith then, made a lot of very, very poor decisions, all of that. And then there was even another big moment when I was in a very abusive relationship. And it was on New Year's Eve, which probably also helps contribute to why I'm not a huge fan of the New Year. Was insanely intoxicated. The abusive, toxic relationship led to a lot of issues. And then I attempted to end my life and was literally lying in my mom's arms. I was like 22 years old, maybe. And I was begging her to let me end my life. I'm like, whoa, looking back at it now, I'm like, I can't believe I put my mom through that. Like, I was saying, Mom, I won't do it unless you give me approval, which obviously she's like, yeah, sure, go right ahead. So,
Right.
yeah, after that moment, and my mother and I got a chance to talk about it years after, I had slowly fallen back into church because I was in network marketing and it was a very faith-based company. And so they kept praising God all the time. So I was like, I should probably go back to church. And then it was in that moment that I actually started developing a relationship with God rather than just knowing his stats. I developed a relationship. And then years later, I was at a church, a Catholic church, and the priest was like, I want you to think of a moment when it was the darkest moment of your life. And where was God in that moment, reflecting back? And it came to that scene of my mom, like just death gripping me in my bed as I'm begging to end my life. And I'm like, there's no doubt that God's protection was over that. And so slowly was opening up my Bible, reading all of that and getting back into it. And then kind of the rest was history. So my faith journey has been just as what it is for many, very probably, I'm assuming, very, very rocky. And then even the more that I have completely surrendered and continue to daily surrender my flesh, it is insanely hard to be a Christian. But at the same time, it is no other way that I would, or there is no other way that I'd want to live, because God has continued to bring so much peace and joy in the suffering where the burden has truly become so much lighter. So thank you for asking that question.
You're very welcome. And I love your answer. And I think it highlights such an amazing point, because a lot of people, well, there's a lot to talk about there, but a lot of people look at where was God in that moment when we struggle with, you name it, because all of us have these very unique struggles that we go through, whether it's looking to end your life or, you know, you're putting business and money as your God, or whatever it is, these moments that you have where you are at your lowest low and you're like feeling as alone as possible, and you're waiting for someone to save you, right? You're sitting there waiting for someone to come in and swoop in and save the day. And I think a lot of people look at, where was God? Why didn't he just perform this magical miracle and take all my worries away?
Yeah.
But you're missing the free will part.
Yes.
You're missing the part where you're supposed to say, hey, I am choosing you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're having the option to recognize God in that moment. And I'm a believer in the fact that if you aren't willing to look at these circumstances as God being there for you in those moments when you need him the most, you are going to continue to experience moments like that are more and more and more extreme, waiting for you to make the choice to accept God in your life. You're going to continue to be...
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Please go.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I just chugged a Red Bull right now, and I don't drink Red Bull. But my energy is already far too much. The world wouldn't want me on Red Bull. What I also just love about that, though, like the goodness of God. Like it's so crazy how we're always quick to blame God for when he won't do something, but we don't give credit to when he does. How beautiful that his love and grace is, that even in those moments when we aren't relying on him, we aren't calling on him, that even though unfortunately things still did happen, and not that God caused that bad thing to happen, but the fact that he still loved you and protected you enough to help get you through that. Even though it maybe didn't come dressed as the way that you thought it was going to, for how you were going to get through that experience, like you're still alive to tell about it. And God loved you enough that even though you didn't choose him in that moment, that he was still there to protect you. Oh, so good.
Yes, I love that. And will continue to show up for you, right? Because there's times when I'll relate this to my daughter for a second, because my daughter will cop an attitude in a heartbeat. And we took her to lunch yesterday, and she said, hey, I want linguine Alfredo with chicken. I was like, all right, cool. No problem. I'll order it for you. The meal came out, and she said, that's not what I wanted. I wanted something else. And my fleshly self was like, all right, fine. Then don't eat. No problem. I will spite you in this meal, and you will sit there and be hungry. And I think about father to child relationship, because how freaking easy is it to, in that moment when your child is sitting there spiting you, being like, you provided a meal for me that I asked for, and now I don't want it, and I'm going to spite you and say I don't want it. As a father, in the fleshly sense, I'm like, all right, fine, be hungry. God doesn't do that to you. He's going to sit there and say, okay, no problem. I'm going to be here for you, waiting for you to accept me, and I will provide for you when you're ready.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So good. You know, one other thing
sit there and constantly push back.
Yeah. I think another thing that I want to touch on here, like real quick, if you don't mind, and especially the journey in faith, which is why I said, like, as a Christian, it's hard. It's so easy that, like, once giving your life to Jesus, or even just in general, maybe somebody who is like on the fence about that, it's because it's like, oh, like, well, if you live this certain way and this is how it's supposed to be, and like, if it's hard, I must be not doing something right as a Christian, or all of this. But it's like, first of all, it even says in the Bible that you will experience trouble, like you will have like suffering. Even Jesus suffered. So who are we to think that we're not going to suffer?
Right.
But one thing that I always like to say is that God never promised us a happy life, but he promised it would be good. Like, the world is constantly selling us that we should be happy all the time. The world's way is not God's way, and it's good. When God created earth, and it was good. He created humans, and it was good. So God promises us a good life, and it is there, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be hard.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that that's such a good point to make. And I don't know if you can even see, I got this shirt on that says, find the good. Right? No coincidence.
There it is. Have you ever, do you remember when that guy went viral, like on social media? He was like, it was at like a fancy restaurant, and he had those really, really small sunglasses, and he would season the steaks.
Yes.
Okay. So that moment, I like to call a moment like that. Like, that's just God sprinkling the extra salt. Like right there, he's like, well done, my children. Let me put some more flavor on that for you.
That's so good. But I think, man, there's so many thoughts rushing through my head.
Looks like whoever's listening, you're going to have to comment. If you're eating this up like we are, you need to comment so he'll bring me back. There you go.
For real. Yes, definitely. But when we started this conversation, let's rewind for a second. Okay?
I know what you're going to say.
Pull it back. We started this conversation on a very different path, right? So like, hey, let's talk about
New Year, new me, goals, right? Failing goals.
And there's a reason why I love having these conversations as raw and authentic, because I'm sure you've done plenty of podcast interviews where it's like, hey, let's read through your bio, and I'm going to ask you 17 questions, and it's a straight up interview. Terrible, right? So, and I don't say that to pat myself on the back, but to give credit to two people who show up and just are raw and authentically looking to help other people be better. Mm-hmm. And as encouragement to you, the listener right now, that there is someone who wants to hear what you have to say, even if you don't think that they do. Mm-hmm. Because how many people are listening to this right now who have something that they want to share, and they think it's insignificant because they haven't accomplished anything. Okay, you and I, and again, no knock to us, we've accomplished a lot of stuff in our lives. We are not pastors. Okay, we have, I'm assuming a little bit here, we have not done as much work in that realm as plenty of other people do. We are not considering ourselves experts. But the two of us here who started a conversation about coaching and new year, new me, looking to better each other, for us to come out here and share our faith, our spiritual journey, and our lessons that we have learned personally over the years, undoubtedly is inspiring someone else to start that conversation. Mm-hmm. So encouragement to you right now, if you have something that you want to share it. Don't worry if it gets 1 like, 0 comments, 14 impressions. Those 14 people who saw it, that one person who saw it, it can change their life. And that is how we continue to rise the tide, by showing up as ourselves. So huge thank you to you again for being you, because this conversation is living proof that it matters. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. And I don't say any of that to end this conversation by any means, because we have a lot more to talk about. But I did want to take a pause there.
For that. Yes.
Just to really hammer that point home, because I do think it's important, right? How many times do you see people who will not talk about the faith component because it's taboo, or not talk about something else because they feel like, hey, maybe I'm not qualified.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called.
Called.
Right?
Yes.
So let's do that for each other, and let's actually endorse each other for what our giftings are, and let's celebrate. I think if we started celebrating each other's uniqueness and gifts, we would all find that we have way more to celebrate.
Yes. Because it's good. Because
Yes.
God is good.
Yes. I love it. All right. So where do we go from here is an excellent question. Because I feel
I know. How do we pivot from that?
Yes, that was a fire hose. Honestly, do you think that there are other people who are listening to this right now who are maybe similar to, because I grew up sort of the same way. I grew up very much in religion, not relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you start that process? I was talking to somebody the other day who said, I was praying to God and I'm sure that I did it wrong. And I was like, hold up. You can't pray to God wrong. Okay, obviously, you can be abusive in your language. Let's not do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's relationship.
Yeah.
Like, have relationship. And again, it's as if you and I were trying to have a conversation where it was very forced and I'm trying to coerce you to answer a question.
Mm-hmm.
How much different is it when you and I just talk?
Right.
And that's the encouragement that I gave to him. I was like, hey, just talk.
Yeah.
Just be willing to listen, be willing to receive, and be willing to be open with who you are authentically and share from where you are. Has your journey in going from religion to relationship been similar? Like, let's talk that out.
There's like 7 different ways I could take this. I think for me, and this is something that's been really cool about my journey, because it's actually funny that you brought up the whole experience with being a pastor. The Lord had put it on my heart at the end of last year to consider becoming a pastor. So I actually went through an internship to consider that journey. I've written sermons. I volunteer really heavily through my church. I get to do prison ministry, where I go out and I do church with the inmates at the women's prison here in Texas, about 2 hours from where I'm at. I serve in the prayer team at my church. So all that stuff. But what's interesting is, again, with my journey, it was very much all like a rule. So I knew a lot of almost a very black and white, like it's this or it's that. This is just what you do. And if you do that, then you're good with God type thing. And I remember in the moments when I was angry with God, but even when I was kind of just going through life and going to church because it's what I knew, I wasn't really necessarily getting anything from it, or at least not at the time. I didn't feel like it. One thing that I struggled with so bad was people who would, as I like to call, throw the book at me. Like, if you come at me and you start spitting scripture to shame me, absolutely not. I don't want it. I'm a big believer. Unsolicited advice is the worst advice you could ever give somebody. You have to make sure somebody is ready or is willing to even hear what it is you're about to provide. And so I think the first step above anything is for those of us who are on the other side of it, if you're experiencing somebody asking that question, it's to just simply love them. Seek it from a space of understanding and curiosity with them. I'm in this with you. Let's explore that together. For somebody who may be intimidated, I even remember when it was new to me to pray over people, because that's not something I ever experienced at a Catholic church. It was surrounding myself with people who could kind of encourage me to do that, but just trying it. What do you really have to lose? Just try it. That would be kind of my second point. My third would be, so I've heard this, a couple of different pastors say this, and I don't remember the first one that I'd heard it from, but they're imagine that you had a chance to meet Michael Jackson, and you're a huge Michael Jackson fan. You know all of his songs. You knew each album, you knew the dates of his debut, you know his birthday, you know his family, all this stuff. You know the stats that are out there. Okay. But then all of a sudden you get a chance to sit down and have dinner with Michael Jackson. And that's what you start talking to him about. And he's like, do you really think you know me? Like, it's just in a magazine. Like that's a bio someone wrote about me. Like, that's not who I am. It's the same with God. Like, a lot of people are forced that, like, you hear all of these things about it or about him, and then all of a sudden you feel that you're supposed to know God or how he operates. But what if you actually took a chance, just like you would a relationship with any human in your life? If you're dating somebody, if you're wanting to consider going down a specific career path, you're going to sit and you're going to make time to get to know that person, to understand that person. And God works the same way. So yes, just kind of opening up a Bible, even if you don't know what you're doing, saying some words with the intention of this God that you hear about, and then just waiting to see what happens. Like, that's starting the relationship, because you're making it a point to develop a relationship with him. So I think, like, don't feel that there's a right or wrong way to do it. Just simply talk to him. Just simply open up the book and get curious and be like, what am I reading?
Yeah,
I don't even know if that answers it. That's just what came to my mind.
It does, because I think it's good encouragement to not be transactional in your conversation, but look to build a relationship. You know, that's really what it is. And I think there's another big part of that is sharing the God stories when they come up, right? Because it builds people's faith, and it helps build the picture of who God is and how God shows up in relationship for people like you and I.
Yeah.
All right, for us to sit here and say, hey, we had a podcast conversation that was scheduled to talk about whatever.
Goals.
Like, right, that, and have it take this radical left turn, and now we're having a totally different conversation.
Yeah.
God showed up, right?
Yeah.
There are so many times in my life where I can point to feeling led to have a conversation or do something that felt weird or off, but I'm like, all right, you know, I'm getting the Holy Spirit nudge, and you follow through with it, right? God speaks, you move, God shows up, right? How many times that happens when you share it, it increases not only your own faith, but the faith of the other people that hear it. So I believe that it's a really important thing for each of us to do, is to share that when it happens, because it helps you learn more about who God is and how God shows up. Because those are things you're not going to read in People magazine to get the stats, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to read that, but it starts to help you really build this understanding. And I truly think that that's really important.
Well, and then even like think about, to go to that point too, like my relationship with God is going to look a lot different than your relationship with God, right? Yeah. I'm sure like your daughter, the type of relationship that you and her have versus the relationship that she has with her mom, I'm sure is still completely different. You know different things about one another, or you see it differently, and there's still something that's loved a little bit differently. So it's like you can't compare that journey and what that relationship looks like. It's your relationship. That's a very intimate thing that you have with God. But like, and not that I want to come up from this situation, because I can clearly, we're going to have 6 hours of talking about God if you let me. But to almost kind of oddly circle this back to what we started with, notice that we also started talking about, like, with setting goals, it's important to know where you are, but also making space to sit with yourself, so you can also get to know you and develop a relationship with you. That's very much the same thing that we need to do with God. That's very much what we need to do with the people around us. So if anything, that the way this still does all still tie together is that, like, the world is constantly trying, and what I would also like to go into is saying that's the enemy's tactic. Let's keep you busy. Let's keep you living in fear. Let's just keep you doing everything but sitting still. God called us to be human beings, not human doings. So if we can learn to just stop and be in a world that makes us feel like we have to constantly do, there is a lot of fruit that is just waiting for you if you just stop and breathe and listen and get curious. Okay, that's what I got.
No, I love that. It's great advice, because there's so much around us that we don't pay attention to, right? You know, a lot of times when you're in that hustle and grind mentality where you think, hey, I'm just going to put my head down, focus on this, and you've got all these blessings just passing by your head and you're not paying attention to them.
Yep.
But I mean, I'm sure as anyone else, you usually see what you're looking for. So if you're looking for struggle and stress, that's what you're going to see. But when you make it a daily practice to look for, hey, how is God showing up in my life? All of a sudden, blessing, 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 they're all around you. And again, not only is that increasing your faith, but it's also increasing just the enjoyment that you have and the goodness in your life because you're seeing it and you're sharing it. And that's when it multiplies.
Yes. So good.
Yeah.
So good.
I love that. So I want to share a story with you. This is a bit of a left turn. We're still on the God topic here.
Yeah, I was going to say, wherever you want to go, I'm picking up what you're putting down. Take me wherever.
Okay. So I want to share the story with you, and I don't necessarily know why, but I'm feeling called to share it with you, so I'm going to share it with you.
Okay.
You ever seen the movie Honey, I Shrunk the Kids?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm watching that movie with my wife and my 2 kids, and we get to the part where they got the little ant there, and there's a scorpion, and the scorpion starts attacking the ant. And we pause the movie because my daughter starts crying. She's upset about the kids. The kids are in danger and all this stuff. She's worried that the scorpion is going to kill the kids. And she's very upset. So she climbs up on my lap and I talk to her and I'm like, I tell her, it's okay. They're going to be okay. I know how the story ends.
Oh.
Okay. So the reason I share that is because in that moment, I realized how many times are we that little kid who just needs to climb on her daddy's lap and say, man, I'm really nervous about what's going to happen. Okay. And really nervous about how this is going to end because in the moment, all that I can see, it doesn't look good. Right. But we got our daddy there to be like, hey, man, it's okay. I know how the story ends. Stick with it. It's all going to work out.
Oof. Oh, I'm gonna be sharing that with people all the time. I hope you know that is so good. And isn't it beautiful what kids are constantly teaching us?
It is.
Like but kids again, are able to teach us more than probably what any adults do. And what a beautiful moment that you got to spend with her and be that support for her, but for you to be comforted by the ultimate comforter in that moment too. That is amazing. And first of all, for anybody, if you're not all about this God thing and you're still listening, holy cow, thank you for still choosing to stick around. But I think that that's a beautiful thing to just consider of like, hey, maybe there is something to this, to sit with that. But for those of you, if you truly are going through a storm, I'm going to go a different route too. I'm going to go with what came to my heart. I actually have a tattoo right here on my arm. Can't see it, but it says, where there is peace, he is present. And the reason why I got that is because there have been a lot of dark times in my life, many of which I literally, as I shared earlier, tried to take myself out completely. And God is always right there. We're the ones that run from him. He doesn't go anywhere. He's always there. Even when he's silent, he's still always there. We're the ones that run. But I had somebody share with me one time that if you just allow yourself to just slow down and try to find, like search for even just the smallest speck of peace, like that is your comforting reminder that God is there. And then it takes me to the scripture of where Jesus is in the boat with the disciples and they are freaking out because it's storming, the boat's going all over the place. They think they're going to die. And Jesus is just chilling. He's sleeping in the boat. And then he gets up and he's kind of frustrated. He's like, did you guys not just see the miracles and things that I just performed for you? And then he's like, see, be silent. And everything goes still. In an instant, he can change it. So if you're sitting in a massive storm, like hold on and let yourself experience the peace that is still there in this moment, because in any given moment, it can change. Any given moment.
I love that. That's such a good word.
As was yours. I didn't mean to like overstep your amazing word because yours was way better. But to tie with that, like just to continue to encourage anyone who's listening, no matter where you could be at right now. Yeah.
I think to land the plane on that, God is good. And I think we can certainly agree on that. And really is just encouragement for people who maybe you're stuck in a spot where you're struggling and you're trying to figure out, how do I do it?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think you and I speak to a lot of people who lean on their own understanding a lot,
Mm-hmm.
who may sit here and be like, I can figure it out. I've got ChatGPT and Google, and I can listen to two smart people on a podcast talk about, hey, here's the answer. Here's the magical pill you need to take to 10x your productivity, and I can just hustle and grind my way to success. And then you show up here and you listen to two people who are going to talk about that, and then ultimately take a really radical right turn and give you the real answer.
And for what it's worth, and I feel weird because I don't like plugging myself. That's something I'm working on this year. But also, that's literally the people that I coach. The people that are financially successful, they're completely crushing it. Like I tell them, I was like, if you want to make more money, don't come work with me. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm not a business coach. I'm like, my goal is like, why is it that you feel that you need that? There's a difference of doing something for love versus from love. And so many people are successful and good at what they do, and they're good to other people, but they are lacking so much fulfillment. And it's because they have ran so far from themselves. And even if they are believers, they are still so far from God that is why that they are not feeling the satisfaction that they thought they would have. The world tells us that success is power, fame, money. But real success is connection, love, and serving.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
And as someone who spent 20-something years chasing the earlier definition of success, right? And that's how I wound up in front of a half-eaten birthday cake. That wasn't it. And that was the reason why I started this journey and continued to have these conversations and figure out, hey, what does real success look like?
Yeah.
And the coolest freaking part of it is when you do it with God at your side instead of just this magical genie who's going to come through and give you a miracle when you go to church twice a year. My businesses are doing better than they were before. My relationships are doing better than they were before. And I spend most of my day 3D printing cool gadgets and playing with my kids.
Yeah.
And I say that to say it does not have to be this hustle and grind mentality. If you put things in the right structure and order and put God first, figure out how to actually dedicate your life to doing the right thing, not lean on your own understanding, but build the kingdom. Hey, guess what? All those riches will be given unto you. Mm-hmm. It's just how it works. And we're not sharing a secret here, but it's a story that people don't tell publicly enough for whatever reason. And again, I just want to honor you for coming here and for having that conversation, because I know people will be saved from this conversation.
Yay! Yes, please make sure you guys comment, because I want to be able to know if this was impactful for you guys. So that's my selfish request. Please make sure you comment. And even if you don't tell me, tell Jim. That way he can tell me, because I want to know.
Yes.
Because also that's another thing. Not that that's why it's done, but when you do reciprocate it, because I don't know, Jim, I don't want to speak for you. I'll speak for myself. There's a lot of times where people don't react to my stuff, and then all of a sudden they'll see me in person and they'll tell me how something that I did that they saw of mine changed. And I'm like, I didn't even know that my content came up on your page. That makes me so happy. So when you do that, that encourages us and keeps our fires lit to be able to go out and keep saying the things that we're saying too. So yes, please make sure you give feedback. If you're like, Jayme, you have way too much energy, I couldn't even listen to you because you talk too fast. Say that too. That's great feedback.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, because I was talking about that with someone the other day about my content, because I don't know if you get them too, but occasionally I'll get messages from people who are like, I noticed you put out great content, but you only get X amount of likes on your, right? And what's interesting to me is, first of all, that's not why I do it. Okay, I don't do it to get the attention. This is not for me. But second of all, I've had that conversation with people so many times where it's like, hey, Jim, you shared X, Y, and Z 6 months ago, and I just wanted to thank you. It really changed my life. And without a fail, every single time I'll go back and look, and that person never commented. They never liked that post, right? But they saw it, right? So it's just encouragement that again, let's loop back to what we said before. If you think people aren't receiving the word that you're putting out there, or it's not making a difference, it is, right? Just don't expect that Amazon Prime result to show up on your front door in 3 to 6 hours, right? Let that seed grow. Go out there and do good deeds, and right, it'll grow.
I was at a coffee shop a few months back, and this guy like kept looking at me all weird, and I was just like, "Hi," because I'm like a social butterfly. I will literally talk to somebody as if I've known them for 15 years and like never even met them. And he walks up to me and he goes, "Are you Coach Jayme?" And I was like, "That's weird that you called me that just randomly in public." But yeah, I was like, "Yeah, like, how did you know?" And he's like, "Your stuff comes up on my social media all the time." And he's like, "Your stuff is great." I'm like, "I don't even know who you are. Oh my gosh, that's an honor. Like, I'm not that big of a deal. So that's really freaking cool." Like, so yeah, that's also encouragement too, that if you feel like people don't see your stuff, the internet is a crazy thing. Oh, and I'm going to share this too, because somebody said this to me earlier this week that encouraged me when I was kind of feeling defeated. I'm all about transparency here. So yeah, that always gets in my head a lot too, even though I know, right, the opposite. But they shared that, going back to this whole God thing, like he created every single one of us. Like even before technology, he would have mysterious ways on how people would connect. So it's like, always know that like what's meant for you will not pass you by. The people who are meant to see your stuff, like the people who are meant to be listening to this right now, like that's not a coincidence. Like that's more orchestrated than you will ever know. Because like randomly somebody can come dropping in and be like, "I don't know why, but randomly your stuff came up on my thing." Or you just happen to be sitting at the coffee shop next to me and I saw you recording a podcast or listening to a podcast talking about something, and I just had a question I wanted to ask you, and it led to whatever. Like God knows the names of every single human that is walking around on this earth, and so if he wants people to cross paths, he will make it happen.
Yeah, I love that. It is very true, and I think it's also encouragement for us to go out there and share our message. Because again, right, even if you think it'll never reach the right person, right, if you act. Interesting thing, I'm trying to think of how specifically I want to tie this together, but when you hear about knock and the door will be opened, or being called to do something, I think oftentimes we forget the activity of answering the door or responding to the call. Right? Like how many times do you see people pray for a hole and then lean on the shovel and wait?
Yep.
Take a little bit of action, right? Don't just pray for it. Don't just expect it to happen to you because you're a good person.
Yeah.
Do your part, right? It's more than just prayer and waiting. It's action, right? So be a person of action. Mm-hmm. Be a person of faith. Be a person of action. Be a good person. Mm-hmm. And man, this has been a whirlwind. I feel.
Can I add to that really quick? Okay.
Yeah, please do.
Interestingly enough, and again, God, I love when God does this, because I was just the same coffee meeting I was talking about earlier that I met with my friend with this morning. We were talking about this, and weirdly, but it's really not that weird because this happens all the time. I don't do, like I said, New Year's resolutions, but I do the theme word, where it's like I will still go through and I set all my goals, and then I will pick a word that seems to resonate with all areas of my life and all that I'm wanting to accomplish. Last year it was glorify. We're good, bad, in between. I don't care. Every single day I'm going to make sure that I glorify God, whether it's wearing a shirt that says something about God, whether it's literally talking about him, praying over somebody, thanking God for like helping me through a struggle, whatever it may be. That was my word. And then this year my word was receive. And because I've had so many people say it to me, I don't know if you do Enneagram, but I'm an Enneagram 8, which is the challenger. No. Okay. So Enneagram, it's kind of like how you have like Myers-Briggs, DISC, all of those different personality things. So essentially something about my character is I am very rare is it that I ask for help. I'm always the one that will take care of other people. Like I will, if you wanted to give me a gift, I would be like, no, that's okay. Go give it to somebody else. Even if I really needed it, I would say no. Like I would return, I would be like, you take it back. I literally even hurt my mom's feelings the one time for Christmas. She gave me a gift and I left it sitting on her nightstand, and I left her house, and she called my other sister very hurt because I denied the gift she tried giving me. That is something that I struggle with. Action is not my problem. I am an overachiever, so I have no problem just taking action. My issue is genuinely allowing to receive. Because again, going back to free will, that's also the choice. Is I have blocked so many blessings because God has chosen people in my life to provide a blessing. And I have said no. So I now blocked somebody an opportunity to bless another person, but I also blocked the very thing I was asking for. So similar to like the shovel was right there and all you had to do is take action and dig. Mine could also be like, well, hey, Jayme, here, let me just completely open this up for you that you don't even have to fall into it. Like, just here you go. And I'm like, no, that's okay. I'll wait for the next hole. Let that be for somebody else. Like, so my word for the year is to just genuinely receive and like allow myself to like give, or allow myself to receive the gift that God is trying to give me and not deny it. So there's just another layer in case there's an audience member that is thinking that, because this is one thing that I think is cool too, when you're talking about the story thing. You and I clearly have very different communication styles. We have very different tones. We have very different energy levels. And that's the other beautiful part about this conversation that's happening is you and I could literally say the same exact thing. How you say it is going to resonate more with somebody than if I said it, and then vice versa. The way that I said something is going to speak life into somebody, even though you said the same thing, the tone, the energy was a little bit different. So it was received differently. So that is also why you speaking up and you sharing your story matters, is because there is a way that you are going to be able to give that information to somebody in a way that only you can heal them. I have spent a lot of time, because of me experiencing just very unfortunate things in my life, that if there was a Christian, and this is something that I have still been working on very heavily recently, and God has humbled me on, walks of life who haven't been through what I have, and then they try to tell me that God wants to bless me. And I'm like, you don't even freaking know where I've been. Who are you to try to tell me this? I don't respect this coming from you. But hearing it from somebody who literally was like, Jayme, I've been in your shoes. I've walked that. But let me tell you about this. And instantly I was like, holy cow, you just changed my life. So the way you are able to provide healing to somebody is a gift that nobody else has. So that is also why your story matters. Because if you feel like your story isn't bad as somebody else, those people could also be like, well, I don't feel like I'm good enough to have this happen to me because I haven't experienced that hardship. So maybe somebody else who is relatable to them is going to be able to heal them in a way that I never could. So know that your story matters and is going to heal the people that you are meant to heal with that. Okay, I'm done. Sorry, that was a really long tangent. I didn't mean to go down.
No, I think we can officially drop the mic on that one. I honestly don't know. I don't know that we can really improve on this conversation from here. This has been an honestly amazing conversation, right? And there's no coincidences.
Absolutely.
It's just amazing. So we will both collectively glorify God in this moment, right? For showing up here and for steering this conversation where it needed to be for the person who's hearing this, who needed to hear it. Because this, I will admit, was not the intention of this conversation at all. But for whatever reason, you, and you know who you are, whoever you are, who are listening to this right now, needed to hear this today. Please accept this. Welcome this gift, receive this gift in your life because it's meant for you. And let this be a sign to take today to be the day that you make this moment matter. That you'll remember, hey, on whatever day this is right now that you're hearing this, you're sitting in your car, you're going on a walk, whatever this is, remember this moment as the moment that you decided to take the action, to receive the gift, right? To build that relationship with God and to put your spiritual health on priority. Because if nothing else, it matters. So, Coach Jayme, thank you for being you. Thank you for being you. It's been an honor for real. Where can people continue to build relationship with you?
Thank you so much for this. Even if nothing else, I'm one of those people, I'm not listening to it, but my heart is completely full. So I got blessed today. So thank you so much for Jim and for making space for this. And the way that you are clearly answering his call and doing work with the shovel. So my heart was blessed today. Cyberstalk me. I am Jayme with a Y. I don't have any I's. So you can find me on Instagram at Coach Jayme, Facebook, Jayme Shiarla Coaching. I also have a podcast, Make Time for Your Mind with Coach Jayme. Feel free to any of those. But yeah, cyberstalk away. I hope if there's anything that can provide encouragement, cool, anything you need, I'm happy to chat.
Thank you. I'm pretty positive this won't be the last time we speak, but
let's go.
Again, huge honor to you.
Comment, make it happen. Bring me back.
Let's go. Awesome. Again, thank you. And
thank you.
We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Hey, before you go, can I pray for you? Heavenly Father, thank you for this moment and for the person listening right now. I pray that this message reaches exactly who needs it. Open their eyes to see your truth and their ears to hear your voice clearly. Lord, I ask that you silence every doubt and every fear holding them back. Remind them that they are fearfully and wonderfully made, created with purpose and intention. Help them to step boldly into the calling you have placed in their life. Surround them with your peace, guide them with your wisdom, and strengthen them with your love. In Jesus' name, amen. I love you.